Universal health care, raising the minimum wage. If you want clean water, clean air, clean food, keep going. If you are a doer of the deed, I want you to stand up to your feet right now. We have courage enough, conviction enough, people power enough to stand up and do what is right for ourselves. I am unbought and unbought.
Welcome to Unbossed. So glad you're here. And today I have with me the one and only Mayor Mondale Robinson from the great city and state of Enfield, North Carolina. How you doing today, Mayor?
I'm beside you, so I'm blessed. You know that.
I feel the same way. Always love it when the mayor's here to co-host with me on Unbossed. And what we have for the show today, today is the runoff election in Georgia. We'll be breaking down that race. Turns out Trump was sitting on a big pile of debt before he became president. Not all that wealth he talked about him having, was not a billionaire by any stretch of the imagination. Well, maybe in his mind. And good news, the labor revolution has arrived in the South. Power to the people and power to the unions. So let's start off with the runoff election that is going on in the great state of Georgia. So today is the day. The runoff election in Georgia is happening right now. And this race will determine whether Reverend Senator Warnock or Mr. Herschel Walker will become the senator of Georgia. And why is this Georgia runoff election important? I'm so glad that you asked. Back in November, Senator Warnock received 49.4% of the vote and Walker received 48.5% of the vote. So we can see very, very close election. And Georgia is one of the few states that requires runoff elections when neither candidate gets a majority of the votes in the general election. So here we are. A polling average has been done, but the race is so very close. Let's look at this. Warnock has a small polling lead in Georgia, but Walker could still win. But Warnock's 1.9 polling lead is not for sure. This race could go the other way as well. So nobody should get comfortable. While Warnock may be better positioned than Walker, either candidate could win. And we see the polling there and what the advantage looks like. But they're in a statistical dead heat right now. Mayor?
Yeah, I think, first of all, It's a wonder to be on the show. As always, I like being beside you. Let's be clear. The racist history of runoffs in Georgia is unbelievable that we're still doing this in 2022, being reminded that white people have and use tactics to weaken the black vote in so many ways. And also, we would be remiss if we didn't remind people that Herschel Walker is not a Georgian citizen. He's not lived in Georgia since he played football there. And the idea that Donald Trump can recruit this man from Texas, where he's still paying his taxes as homestead. It's absolutely ridiculous that they think this is all it takes to win a black vote. You just bring in a black face, even if they are as dumb as this guy is, and I don't use dumb lightly. Herschel Walker has shown us that he's a dumb candidate and been willing to be a puppet for the Republicans. And so much so that you run into a runoff that's going to cost the Georgia taxpayers tens of millions of dollars to do this election. With that said, I will say this. What we know about these polls is that they continue to be wrong and wrong. We saw so many polls be wrong throughout the years, talking about black people aren't motivated, black people aren't happy about election. But what we do is we continue to deliver for democracy. I'm talking about the black vote, especially in Georgia, as we saw. We gave them 2 senators in 2020, and then we actually gave them a majority of the votes this election cycle, but it wasn't enough for white Georgians in this rule. So now we have to go back and do it again. And what we've seen so far, this poll may say this race is close, but I'm telling you, the voters of Georgia, the black voters of Georgia turned out in record numbers day after day during early voting. We saw us break records day after day. And now what we know is these polls are saying of likely voters that this race is close, but in actuality, the people that turned out weren't likely voters. So we have what we know. We don't want people to think it's over, like you said. Don't take it for granted, but we definitely have this in the bag. We have absolutely smashed the numbers. The number of people, black people that turned out, will be higher probably than what happened for Barack Obama in a presidential election, percentage-wise. And we're going to show people that black people aren't fooled by black faces like Herschel Walker. That means harm to our community. And you're going to have an overwhelming victory for Warnock. I'm calling it.
Yes, I hope your prediction is correct. And we have a saying in the black community, sometimes you can be our color, but not our kind. And Mr. Herschel Walker is not our kind in terms of the things that he should stand for. And Mayor, I want our viewers to know that you spent a lot of time across the country, but you spent a lot of time in Georgia during the 2020 election. So you're not just somebody who was sitting on the sidelines saying what you're saying right now. You get the pulse of the people in Georgia because you were there rocking black men hard in 2020. So you are an expert about what will and can and hopefully happen in the great state of Georgia. So glad you remind us of the historic racial past of why we do have runoffs. It is good for people to know that. It was to prevent black people from being able to win races. But as you have noted, Mayor, today we're gonna show them something. My grandma used to say, I can show you better than I can tell you. So here we go. So today's runoff comes after an interesting campaign ran by Herschel Walker. Basically, his campaign is being ran by Senator Lindsey Graham. And Walker has often been joined by Senator Graham and also Senator Ted Cruz in on-air appearances. Watch these.
Thank Herschel Walker and his family for representing the Republican Party in Georgia so well.
How can he keep the almighty oath to the almighty God and he keep it for them? He hadn't kept it for nobody, so that proves the type of man he really is.
But I'm all in. I'm gonna do 34 push-ups. And if you'll give $1 for every push-up I do, you tell me when.
Go. 1, 2, 3, 4.
What is it about this guy? He changes the entire narrative of the left. We're a party of racists, Sean. Me and you're a racist. The Republican Party's racist. Well, what happens when the Republican Party elects and nominates Herschel Walker, an African-American black? They have treated him like crap. His family, stand by Herschel tonight.
An African-American black, we all those things all wrapped up. You know, it's very clear that Senator Lindsey Graham does not understand the definition of racism, what systemic racism means, just by electing, God forbid, Mr. Herschel Walker as a GOP senator in the great state of Georgia does not make the GOP not racist. Let's underline it, bold it, put it in a message in a bottle and send it on a train. The brother don't understand, and so we need to send him back to school, Mayor, because he doesn't get it. Watching that was embarrassing for me. I was embarrassed for Herschel Walker. He looks like a puppet, and I don't want to see anybody, especially a black man, looking like that. But it was very clear who's in control, and they don't want him to say anything. They just want him to perform. And yeah, there you have it, Mayor. Your thoughts on what we just saw?
That was, you absolutely right. That was disgusting. As a black man watching that, it hurts to see that. But I mean, we are talking about Herschel Walker. This is a black man who's been told by his whole life, by white men, what to do. Run the football, run this way, do this. His entire life has been controlled by white men. And it seems that his campaign is an extension to his life, and it's tragic. I talk about crocodile tears. Lindsey Graham crying, talking about this will make that party not racist is ridiculous to me. The Republican Party is still a racist party, with or without Herschel Walker. And his thinking is Herschel Walker comes in, he'll be able to tell him what to do. You saw what happened the one time that Senator Scott from South Carolina got in line on trying to work with the Democrats on police reform. Lindsey Graham shut him down. So he's thinking we don't need a free-thinking black man in the Senate. We need one that we can control like they've been doing. And you're absolutely right. They don't want Herschel to say anything, which is why they've kept him from the microphone from any reporters for the past 30 days. He's not said one thing to reporters because when he speaks, the world is reminded that it's dumb. And maybe he is the perfect candidate. Lindsey Graham said him being elected rewrites the narrative. No, it puts on blast that the Republican has no platform and they're willing to elect anybody with an R beside their name, regardless of what they stand for, i.e. Donald Trump, i.e. January 6th, i.e. all of the election deniers, all of these people who will say that none of the elections for the past 2 years have been real, except they won elections themselves or they wouldn't be in office. So it's not their elections, it's only when Democrats win that they have a problem with elections. And we know that patriot means something completely different to Republicans. It means you're loyal to white supremacy and white think, not this country, not Old Glory. If you're loyal to Republicans and what happened on January 6th, then they're good with it. They don't care about this country. We know that now.
That is the truth. And Mr. Walker certainly was a talented football player, but being the next senator, United States senator, state senator, any type of senator from the great state of Georgia is really not his assignment. It's just not, and it is embarrassing. And so it's clear that the Republican Party is using Herschel Walker. Now, we're no stranger to black people being used. I want to lay this out very clearly that the mayor and I understand that the Democratic Party does not have clean hands either. It is just that in this case, what the Republicans are doing with Mr. Herschel Walker is overt. It's very open. We can see it with our own eyes and how this man responds or lack of response. He's like a Manchurian candidate to them. He's like a toy, like a puppet. I mean, that is what it is, and it's unfortunate. However, both parties use black people. The Democrats just do it at times more covertly. Now, in this case, we're talking about the GOP, but I just had the mayor put an asterisk there because I don't want folks to think that you and I don't understand what happens in politics, especially when it comes to the black community. We get it, we got it. We're talking about this instance right here. Even Joy-Ann Reid called out what is happening to Herschel Walker. Take a look at this.
Heard this from a lot of black men, even if they're not in Georgia. Yeah. There's a certain disrespect that a lot of black men in particular feel about particularly the way that Walker has been walked around by people like Lindsey Graham and sort of used and put forward. They don't seem to respect him, and they don't seem to respect black people.
No. It's embarrassing as hell. I mean, it really, really is. It's cringy. I mean, it just makes you cringe because, again, we don't want to see anybody disrespected or used like that, and especially a black man. Especially somebody, and Mary, the point that you made about he is accustomed by virtue of the fact that he was a football player and the coaches mainly were white and the owner of the team was white. And so you're right, and that's no dig at him that his previous career he definitely was controlled by white men. So this is comfortable. I mean, this is a comfortable position for him, unfortunately. So no slam on him, but that's just the reality of being a sports figure, Mayor.
It is. It absolutely is. It also speaks to the fact that 70% of the people that play football are Black at the professional level, and none of the owners are. Right? None of the owners of the teams are Black. So that too highlights the discrepancy in equity or lack of equity in this country and in the systems. And I think you're right. I think that clip you just played with Joy and Reed speaks to something like this. Is not just Black men in Georgia that are offended by what's happening with the Republicans, and you said it clear. Democrats are on call as well. They have their issues as it pertains to Black people not having equity in their party, although we overwhelmingly support their candidates and lift that party up. I would say the Democratic Party does not win national elections without the Black vote ever, right? For the past 40, 50 years, this has been the case. So I think there's some truth to that. But right now, what we're seeing, this is absolutely disgusting. Not just because Herschel Walker is inept to be a candidate, but he's not even a Georgian. There was not a Black Republican in Georgia that they saw fit to run as a candidate. You went all the way to Texas to find Herschel Walker to be a candidate. Like you said, this is not his call, and this is not his bill in life. We as Black voters, as Black men voters, will not stand by. And I know people are ticked off because, like you said, we've been in Georgia since 2019, working steadily with the Black Male Voter Project. A shameless plug here, but right now in the runoff, we've knocked on 160,000 doors of Black men talking about this, and Black men are not happy about Herschel Walker's candidacy. It also shows that people don't understand Black men at the political level. This is why it's so important that we continue to listen to what brothers are saying.
Yeah, we have to. And, miss me on that. Black men are not involved and engaged, because they are. And Mary, again, you are an expert in engaging Black men all across this country, but especially in Georgia over the last 3 years. So the Republican Party could really be in trouble today. They really could. It turns out that their evil plan to restrict voting and tout voter fraud is not working for them. Let's look at this headline. After years of attacking early voting, Fox News worries early voting attacks backfired for the GOP. With the Georgia runoff election nearly over, Fox personalities reassess their network's efforts to discourage Republicans from getting out to vote. In other words, it's gonna come back to bite them in their behinds. This tactic is not working. And so that's right. The years that Fox News has spent railing against mail-in voting and early voting may have been a huge mistake on their part. Early and absentee voting has decreased significantly for Republicans in the state of Georgia. And so we can see the graph and see what has happened between Democrats, the GOP, and independent voters. And remember, back in 2020, right-wing media engaged in a propaganda campaign against mail-in voting, lodging false claims that the process was illegitimate. Testimony to the House revealed President Donald J. Trump rejected entries by his own campaign to promote mail-in voting by his supporters, which may have been connected to his later attempts to throw out mail-in ballots and falsely declare himself the winner after he had in fact lost the election. Then in 2021, Fox News embraced the latest wave of Republican efforts at the state level to restrict voting, including in Georgia. And rather than encouraging Republican supporters to vote through any opportunity available to them. And as a consequence, Fox hosts who trashed early voting must teach their viewers to trust it now. Mayor, that is just really clear that these fools do not care about representative democracy at all. Because if they did, whatever methods that a state has, we should be increasing at access to the ballot box, promoting access to the ballot box, whether it be mail-in or early voting. That is what you do if you are pro-democracy, pro-representation, pro having people involved. But it is very clear that the Republicans and Fox News did not see it that way at the time, and now they are regretting it.
Ain't that something?
It is.
Ain't that something? there was no problems. Nobody had a problem with early voting as long as Republicans were using it. They were back when it was a popular tactic for them. When Democrats started using early voting, when we started voting by mail in larger numbers, it became a huge problem for them because their job is not to increase access to the ballot. Their job is to restrict black and brown people from voting in any way possible. So what they thought was they could talk, they can badmouth voting early, and it backfired on them.
It did backfire.
Their voters have 1 day to vote. One day to vote. And we're out here accessing early voting. So I'm loving it. I'm so glad this is the problem they found themselves in.
I'm loving it too, Mayor. And I want people to know, just because people jumped over the hurdle, because Republicans have put many hurdles in Georgia and all across the country, does not mean that there was not a hurdle. Okay, let me just say that just one more time. Just because people surmount the hurdle does not mean that there was not a hurdle, and they are surmounting those hurdles in the great state of Georgia. And can you guess who the real losers are at the end of all of this? For once, at least on this particular issue, the biggest losers are in the US midterm election is the Republican mega donors. They have poured so much money into these races, and they, for once, at least in this moment, may not get a big return on their investments. We'll be right back after this. We keeping it hot on Unbossed. Stay right there.
Welcome to the Happy Hour, everybody. After a week of soul-crushing news, we break out the good stuff. Good news, good videos, good people, and of course, drink good alcohol. That's the worst thing I've ever had.
This is the best show.
Full disclosure, we did do a shot right before the show began. It says,
Let's
flamingo.
flamingo.
The reason you had trouble with that word is it's not a word.
Okay.
This is the one of everything.
I got a rash. Could I just put it on that to see if it'll take it off?
What did you used to think this was?
Bull.
Drink it, swallow it,
No.
spit it. Oh, that's needed after a day like this. Cheers to Brett Ehrlich. Climax. Uranus smells like farts. Because of course it does. This is the worst sketch ever of a perp. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? They found the guy. This is Sophie's super happy dog story of the week.
This dog is so precious and deserves the world. I'm just not drinking that beer.
Here's my dog. This is Onyx.
Yeah, I would just say that he's exotic because he's not your traditional dog. Still 12 out of 10 because they're all good.
Well, if that made you happy, just wait till you see the best thing ever of the week. There is a woman who moves like a horse.
Why do I want to go home and like try this?
We're actually gonna show you the running butthole challenge right now. What's happening?
No, that's just wrong. Every way.
And we'll see you next time.
Hey Dave, as you can probably see, Skype froze. Frozen crashed.
You know, I'm watching that documentary on the Vietnam War, and there was a TV journalist in the middle of some tiny little village in Vietnam doing live TV as the soldiers were burning the Vietnamese huts, and it didn't crash. And that was 1965, and he was in Vietnam.
Welcome back to our amazing show. And this is my favorite part, to be able to read your comments. Before I get to the viewer comments, though, I want to remind you, #WeAreBG, #WeAreBG. Do not, under any circumstances, forget about the trauma and drama that Brittany Griner and her family are enduring. And we have an update about our donations in Jackson, Mississippi. Thanks to everyone who donated, we were able to reach our goal of almost $30,000, and we actually raised over $32,000. So thank you to everyone who donated to TYT.com relief. You know, we were on it on Unbossed every single day of the show since our debut on October 17th. Now to our viewer comments. Tall Glass of Shut Up Juice. Hey, Tall Glass, glad you're in here today. Says, I really love when Mayor is on to co-host. And Tall Glass put a beautiful heart there, Mayor. And my love for my shero, Miss Turner, is a given. Thank you so much, Tall Glass. So shut up, the Mayor and I received that. And on Twitch, Molly B says, go Warnock with exclamation points. Yes, Senator Warnock. Go, go, go. And Overseer Dixon, hey, Overseer Dixon, glad you're back. Oh, Mr. Mayor and his gorgeous beard on Nina's show. You know you're in for a treat with this duo. Well, the Mayor and I agree with that. And yes, the Mayor does have a very gorgeous beard. And on YouTube Super Chat, DJ says, all these emojis putting up the power sign, unbossed. Hello, somebody. Hello, somebody, because everybody is somebody. Oh, we love you all so much. Thank you for your support of our show. And thank you for your support of the TYT network. We could not do what we do without you, boo. We love you. Thank you so much. So Dems make South Carolina a priority. Dems are looking to change things, to shake them up, I guess. Watch this.
Sources confirmed to NBC News that President Biden has asked Democratic National Committee leaders to shake up the calendar to enhance the influence of non-white voters. In its current format, the Iowa caucuses kick things off, followed by contests in New Hampshire, Nevada, and South Carolina. But the new proposal calls for South Carolina to start the process, followed by New Hampshire and Nevada on the same day, then Georgia, then Michigan. Iowa would see its caucuses replaced with a traditional primary.
I'm sure my sisters and brothers and family and friends in Iowa are not happy about this. I have been on that trail across the country, as has the mayor, several times, and they certainly prided themselves. And I'm talking about the Democratic Iowans here and not the apparatus of the Democratic Party. So I'm sure that they are not happy. And the Iowa caucuses were a scene of chaos. We remember this, Mayor, and I'm sure the people watching us remember this too. In the 2020 primaries, let's take a quick trip down memory lane. I want you to come with me. You ain't got to pack any bags. Let's just go. When results were released in batches in coming days, they were tainted by mistakes that require corrections and apparent math errors that may never be fixed. Sorting through the wreckage isn't just a humiliating experience for the state's Democrats, it's also a cautionary tale. And that reporting was coming from the Associated Press. The disaster has already reshaped how Nevada will run its caucuses 11 days from now, and raise questions about whether caucuses, often criticized as quaint vestiges of another political time, can survive the modern era. Trust me, I was on that trail and I remember that as if it were yesterday. I mean, our whole campaign team was having the WTF moment in dealing with Iowa. Hated to see that happen, but it happened. Now with 2024 approaching, the question is, will the shift to South Carolina as a top priority work? That is a legitimate question. So those seeking to unseat the president would need to connect with South Carolinians, majority Black primary electorate, which is more conservative than either Iowa's prairie progressives or New Hampshire's northeastern Brahmins. In the state 2020 primary, more than 60% of Black voters chose Mr. Biden over his rivals, according to exit polls. And this report is coming from the New York Times. So again, this, we will see if it will work. And then next, Steve Phillips, a Democrat and author of several books on racial politics, said the changes would reward candidates who develop a deep bond with Black communities rather than train them to appeal to rural Iowans who might not support them in November. South Carolina has not always been good, though, to and for progressive candidates. In 2016, South Carolina overwhelmingly rejected Bernie Sanders after his early success. This reporting came from Politico. 4 of the 5 states now poised to start the party's primaries are presidential battlegrounds. Here's a reminder of that proposed new lineup: South Carolina, New Hampshire, Nevada, Georgia, and Michigan. The first 5 states would be positioned to cast ballots before Super Tuesday, the day when much of the rest of the country holds its primaries. That gives the early states outside influence, since White House hopefuls struggling to raise money or to gain political traction often drop out before visiting much of the rest of the country. Now, meanwhile, on the Republican side, the Republican National Committee has already decided to keep Iowa caucuses as the first contest in its 2024 presidential primary, ensuring that GOP White House hopefuls, which include Trump, have continued to frequently campaign there. Now, the change for next year in terms of the DNC, of the Democrats, will have to be voted on by the full DNC, and that will likely happen next year. The DNC also plans to revisit the primary calendar again before 2028, meaning that more changes could be coming before election. Now, Mayor, I'm feeling all types of ways about this, but I want you to jump in here. I don't necessarily agree with Steve Phillips that this will make politicians pay more attention and go deeper with Black voters. It will still be superficial. Also, for me, and I was on the Sanders campaign, as most of our viewers know, I really have some feelings. I'm feeling some type of way about South Carolina and what happened. And although Senator Bernard Sanders did not perform well, I know that writer, the person that wrote that article, I mean, from my vantage point in 2016, I was a national surrogate for that campaign. He had never been a national candidate before, and so you had people running in the race, to be fair to the senator's campaign, who had been national candidates before. So it's harsh to say rejected as much as didn't really know. And in 2020, our campaign did do better, even though it was not enough to turn the tide. We did do better in 2020 than we did in 2016. But the major point here is whether or not this will work and whether or not Black voters will get the deep-seated relationship and love that they deserve from any candidate, especially Democrats.
So I have this horrible, overwhelming feeling about this. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. But let's just be clear. This was selfish, right? Biden and the Democratic, this suggestion has nothing to do with anything other than Biden trying to figure out how he's gonna win and snuff out anybody that might run against him. Let's just say that, first of all. However, much like the Republicans in their acts to talk about bash early voting, this may backfire on the Democratic establishment. Because what we know is that when you spend money on voters, those voters will vote more. So what we know is if you're building an apparatus that Iowa has had for the past 5 decades, all that money being spent every 4 years in Iowa created a better voting bloc, meaning the voters are not better, but they are better trained. They know how to vote, they vote often. So what's gonna happen is more Black people in South Carolina will vote often. That will not bode well for establishment candidates. Maybe not in this first election cycle, but coming up down the cycle, these younger voters, you'll have more younger voters participating. And that means we'll have more Black progressives being trained earlier in their life, which will make them better voters, which means we'll have less establishment candidates winning down the road. I'm happy about that. And if the party tried to say they did this to respect, this is why I pushed back on what Steve Phillips said. If they really cared about Black voters, Mississippi would a long time ago been the first place that we had early voting, because it's the blackest electorate in the country. So that don't act like you did this to give Black people space. No, you did this trying to stack the tables for Biden. I ain't hearing it. I ain't buying it. You're lying. It's gonna backfire on you.
Woo, Mayor, good God Almighty. Let me just go on and fan myself, because Mayor, you dropped the damn mic on that one. It is selfish, it's cynical, and you're right, it may backfire on them. I am so glad you said what you said, because that's how I feel about this situation too. And they're trying to give the more conservative Democrat the advantage. This ain't about black people and being more diverse. This is about a selfish move to help the Democrats and to use black voters as a pawn once again. Hello, somebody. Mayor, I'm telling you, Marissa probably be mad, but I feel like taking off my mic right now and just running around the damn room. You dropped like 100 mics on that one. I'm feeling this. All right, we go into this Trump story right now. Just, hey, watch this.
Sad that you're talking about a potential rematch with an individual who's facing multiple federal and local investigations, a person who they say inspired an attempted coup in this country on January 6th. A person who tried to, basically change, still change the results of an election, like just wouldn't acknowledge the results of an election. I feel like there has to be some type of qualifications for president. I think when you're facing, that much, I don't even think you should be qualified to run.
I'm sure several people feel the way that Charlamagne the God does. I mean, should the man be qualified to run? But here we are. Now, we got some breaking news to add to what Charlamagne had to say. The Trump organization has been found guilty of criminal tax fraud. That just happened today, like several minutes ago. It just happened, like in real time. They have been found guilty. The Trump organization, however, let me be clear, has been found guilty of criminal tax fraud. So it just keeps compounding. And what Charlamagne was literally shaking his head over is the fact that Trump is still in the picture despite all of his ridiculous scandals. And the latest scandal is something that I don't think you can make up. Let's take a look at this headline. Trump did not disclose his $19.8 million loan while president. Documents show the loan from Daewoo, a company with ties to North Korea, should have been reported in public financial disclosures, but he did not do it. Daewoo was the only South Korean company allowed to operate a business in North Korea during the mid-1990s. Now, I care less about the details of the scandal than I do about how someone can be so corrupt and still have a legitimate shot at the presidency of the United States once again. Let us enumerate for you some of those scandals. He denied the election results. He wants to cancel the Constitution. Yeah, you heard it right. I am not exaggerating. I am not making this up. The man said he wants to cancel the Constitution. Stolen documents, multiple investigations in New York, and a dinner with white nationalists. All of this stuff happening. This man is running yet again. And the profiteering he did while he was in office. Let's take a look at this headline. Trump's business hauled in $2.4 billion during 4 years he was president. But he's still in the picture and he's here. And I don't know, this man seems to have like more than 9 lives. Mayor, I don't think any other candidate in particular will be able to get away with what this man has been able to get away with, but here we are.
Yeah, I mean, it shows what's possible when your God is white supremacy. When you praise white nationalists, when you're in America and all you want to talk about is whiteness, or you want to elevate whiteness, then this is possible for you too. Donald Trump took the poorest Americans and made them eat out of his hand because of whiteness, even though he has a serious disdain for them. He said it out loud on several times. He's been recorded saying it, how he feels about them. And even to the point that he said, if I ever run for president, I run as Republican because they're stupid and they will buy it. And they did.
Yeah.
They did. But if you code it in whiteness, that's all it takes for America to remind you that it's racist as it has ever been.
There it is, Mayor. There it is. Well, we'll keep up with this story. Obviously, Trump will trend and trend and trend. Oh, we got some good news for you right now. Get ready for this. The labor revolution in the South is in full effect. With rail workers and coal miners being screwed over, we thought we'd give you some good news on the labor front. Let's take a look at this headline from The Lever. You love to see it. A labor revolution arrives in the South. On November 17th, hundreds of service workers from across the South launched the Union of Southern Service Workers during a 3-day labor summit in Columbia, South Carolina. Y'all better do that. The new organization grew out of the Southern branch of the Fight for 15, a movement to raise minimum wage laws that brought together workers at hotels, gas stations, retail, home care, and restaurants during the pandemic to fight for better working conditions. 7 of the 10 states with the lowest union membership are located in the South, where fewer than 2% of wage and salary workers are union members. Go ahead, Ricardo from The Lever. And then his last point, through strikes, outreach and door knocking, cross-sector organizing, and the anti-racist historical analysis, USSW organizers have promised to win fair pay and better working conditions by any means necessary. Go ahead and quote Minister Malcolm X for the hundreds of thousands of workers in the service industry in the South. Mayor, this is beautiful news.
I absolutely love it. When you think about the work, the history of work exploitation in the South, to hear this, to see this, it's beautiful. And we already know once they win for themselves, they win for all workers. And people might not think about that, but the unions gave us weekends, they gave us child labor laws, and now they're bringing it to the South. I'm super excited about this and can't wait to find out a way to support.
Oh, me too, man. I am right there. Just know you got our support, and look forward to interviewing folks from this new organization. What a great way to organize. And let's put up this graphic. Let us not forget that the average salary for service workers in the South, $26,500. I mean, really? Nobody can really live off of that, especially today. This is not good at all. And so you got to organize and have solidarity one to another. So if you do the math, that's about $13 an hour. It is absolutely not enough to live a good life, and it forces people to work multiple jobs. And it's a good reminder that support for labor unions is popular. US approval of labor unions at the highest point since 1965. Don't let these politicians fool you. And we know what they just did to the rail workers. They railroaded, excuse the pun, the railroad workers. Not a good look for Democrats and not a good look for the GOP. I think there's gonna be a backlash against politicians because of what they did not do for the railroad workers for both parties, but especially the Democrats. Mayor?
Yeah, I think you can't say you are on the side of workers and be happy with that deal. I am disgusted, and we should acknowledge Senator Bernie Sanders did vote against that because he stands for workers every chance he gets. It is absolutely disgusting that this president, who claimed he's from a union family, from a union town, to sign this bill is absolutely disgusting and turn his back on workers in this manner. It will absolutely have ramifications for both parties. For sure.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mayor. Yes, and shout out to Senator Bernard Sanders. Shout out to the 5 senators that voted against the bill, and we had several members in the House vote against the bill as well to stand up for workers. So shout out for all of them. And if you want to support the Union of Southern Service Workers, follow them on Twitter, and there it is. You can support them. Please support them. Bravo for all the great work that you have done and the work that you will continue to do. We'll be right back after this.
We're very honest that we're progressives. We call the Young Turks home of progressives, and we support progressive candidates.
There has been this reemergence of political activism, especially among young people.
This weekend was the second Women's March, both across the US and across the world. So these people are not simply marching, they're not simply talking, they're also running for office. And when they do run, they're gonna make a difference.
Joe Crowley is congressman from New York. He's very powerful. Why? He raised a lot of money. But there's someone finally challenging him.
We need to have representation that advocates as fiercely for working class people as possible from this seat.
If candidates like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez even get a little bit of media attention outside of what the Young Turks does, they have an excellent chance of winning.
She's gonna win. She's gonna win.
68% reporting.
The majority of Americans want Medicare for all. So I don't care what you and your corporate cronies want. What I care about is what the American people want.
We believe in total change. Everything runs on donor money. And that is what we will fight. And that is exactly why they don't like us.
We're having fun. It's election night.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has defeated Joe Crowley.
Here we go again.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Down goes Crowley. Down goes Crowley. Down goes Manafort. Down goes Cohen.
Populist left wing with a gigantic victory in Mexico.
Senator Gillibrand, you have made a pledge to no longer accept corporate PAC money.
Women came out in record numbers in the primaries. They said, you'll be lucky to get one candidate. We now have 12 that have won their primaries. Bezos and Amazon announcing that they are going to go to a 15-hour minimum wage.
We're making progress. Let's keep going.
Many of these women made history.
The biggest victories, all women of color. Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, Sharice Davids and Deb Haaland. For a long time, we have not had progressives in power. It's going to be something to behold.
Welcome to the Happy Hour, everybody. After a week of soul-crushing news, we break out the good stuff. Good news, good videos, good people, and, of course, drink good alcohol. That's the worst thing I've ever had.
This is the best show.
Full disclosure, we did do a shot right before the show began. It says,
Let's
flamingo.
Flamingo.
The reason you had trouble with that word is it's not a word. Okay. This is the one of everything.
I've got a rash. Could I just put it on that to see if it'll take it off?
What did you used to think this was?
Bull.
Drink it, swallow it,
No.
spit it. Oh, that's needed after a day like this. Cheers to Brett Ehrlich. Climax. Uranus smells like farts. Because of course it does. This is the worst sketch ever of a perp. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? They found the guy. This is Sophie's super happy dog story of the week.
This dog is so precious and deserves the world. I'm just not drinking that beer.
Here's my dog. This is Onyx.
Yeah, I would just say that he's exotic because he's not your traditional dog. Still 12 out of 10 because they're all good.
Well, if that made you happy, just wait till you see the best thing ever of the week. There is a woman who moves like a horse.
Why do I want to go home and like try this?
We're actually going to show you the running butthole challenge right now. What's happening? No, that's just wrong. Every way. And we'll see you next time.
The rest of the news media says you should not fight for positive change. If you do, you're not really a reporter or a journalist, because reporters and journalists don't care what happens. I don't agree. That's not written anywhere. That's not a law. It's just a rule that they invented so that reporters didn't actually challenge the people that are in power. Well, we don't agree with that. We think we should challenge the people in power, that actually makes you a better journalist, not a worse one.
Welcome back to our show. My second favorite moment, more viewer comments. TYT members, Sexy Speed Racer says, I like that name, Sexy Speed Racer. How about making it so every state has primary elections for national offices on the same day? Ooh, how about that? It's really the only fair way to ensure that every voter in the country gets a say in who represents the parties in the general election. That's a thought, Sexy Speed Racer. And on Twitch, Nerd says, all solidarity to workers. Everyone needs to do everything they can to throw solidarity and support, both physical and financial. Pull out all stops. When the workers are under attack, what do? Stand up and fight back. You said that, Nerd says. And then on YouTube Super Chat, Larry says, minimum wage would be $28.56 if wages follow prices over the last 30 years. You better say that, Larry. We're gonna keep pushing and we will definitely keep fighting. Thanks to all of you for your support of Unbossed and the TYT network. Now I got a treat for you today. I got two brilliant, and I mean brilliant scholars. Not only are they brilliant, they beautiful too. Baby, when you got them two things going on, that is a heck of a combination. So I have with me today Dr. William Darity and Miss A. Kristen Mullins, and they are the authors of From Here to Equality, Reparations for Black Americans in the 21st Century. And baby, I got my copy. I'm gonna hold that up, this book. But let me give you some information and some background. Dr. William Darity Jr. is the Samuel DuBose Cook Professor of Public Policy, African American Studies, and Economics at Duke University. And Miss A. Kristen Mullins is a writer, a folklorist, museum consultant, and lecturer. And she focuses in on race, art, history, and politics. And I wanna thank you both so much for being on the show today. I am so honored. I think this is the second time we've interviewed one another, but your first time interviewing with me on my new show on Unbossed on TYT. And I'm so grateful that you both have taken the challenge to really go deep on what it means to give reparations to the descendants of enslaved Black Americans in this country. I know there are a lot of people who've been working on this movement before you. You're working on it right now. There's some others, but to have the courage to dig deep in this and to lay out a full blueprint on what can be done and what must be done for Black Americans to finally get the reparations that we need and deserve. I am in awe of your work. And so my first question is, what is the Black reparations movement for people who may not be familiar, and why is it important?
Well, first, let me say that Kirsten and I are thrilled to be on the program with you. And we've been working on this, I guess, for approximately 3 decades. Took us about 10 years to write the book. I know that there's a number of other people who've been working on the reparations project longer than that. Especially Mary Frances Berry, who written an excellent book on Callie House, who was a major figure in the reparations effort in the 19th century. And so if we're thinking about the movement has an extended history. I think that the first significant moment in the effort to gain reparations that had any kind of momentum was the period in the immediate aftermath of the Civil War, when Black Americans who had been newly emancipated were promised 40-acre land grants, which they never received. And we view that as the debt that sets the foundation for reparations. And thereafter, there have been a number of efforts to gain forms of restitution, but those efforts have largely dissipated. And so we're hopeful that in this moment, there's going to be some sustained growth in the movement for reparations.
Yeah, agreed. And Ms. Mullins, one of my favorite chapters in the book is chapter 10, Sins of the Sons and Daughters. And you both make it clear that what is owed to the descendants of enslaved Black Americans goes beyond slavery. You go deep into the broken promises, whether it's the 40 acres and a mule, as well as the land theft that Black people suffered, for those Black people who were able to accumulate land despite the betrayal by the federal government, how white mobs, which would be considered in our lingo, white terrorists, took the land that they did gain from them. Can you talk to us about why that particular chapter of the book is so important?
The topic you're talking about is really relevant for today. When you look at the fight to prevent Black people from having a grub stake, from having an asset in the form of land, you're looking at white supremacists who were arguing against Black people becoming full citizens in the United States. There's a whole panoply of things that one needs to have access to in order to fully function, to be, to have well-being in this country. And at the end of the Civil War, that meant land, land on which to live, to develop your livelihood, to have crops, to be able to sell those crops. And then you're looking also at a moment when Black men were given the right to vote. And because so many of the ex-Confederates refused to pledge allegiance, to sign an oath of allegiance to the United States, they were not eligible to vote. And so these Black Republicans mostly were very active in the political sphere. And stopping them, preventing them from exercising that franchise was a big part of the motivation of the violence that was enacted over and over and over again. Over 100 massacres that we've been able to document that occurred between Reconstruction and the end of World War II. So these massacres are very, they're studied, they're very particular in where they occurred. Many of them happened on election day, or right the days before the election. And in some cases, when the results of the election were not to the white supremacists' liking, they ran out of town or, injured or murdered the Black Republicans and their allies who were lawfully elected, so that the outcome would be to their own choosing, to the choosing of the white supremacists. So these are, voting rights, the ability to hold on to acquire land and to hold on to land. These are problems that Black people are still dealing with today.
That's exactly right.
The ability to live one's life, to live in peace, to be free of white vigilante violence. These are all issues that are very much a problem.
These multiple instances of white coups d'etats are a foreshadowing of what took place on January 6, 2021.
Exactly.
That's exactly right. And I want to put up this quote, and I'm going to have you back on because we got to go. We can go longer, but I want to put up a quote. I love how in every chapter you have several quotes, and this one speaks to me so much. And this is coming from Frederick Douglass. The world has never seen any people turn loose to such destitution as were the 4 million slaves of the South. They were free without rules to cover them, or bread to eat, or land to cultivate, and as a consequence died in such numbers as to awaken the hopes of their enemies that they would soon disappear. That is coming from Frederick Douglass, celebrating the past, anticipating the future, 1875. And as I said, there are several wonderful quotes that just kind of shake you and really set up the foundation to each and every chapter of this book. I encourage anybody who is curious, people who want to know what it will take to continue this gallant fight for reparations, you must pick up the book. But my question here probably will be my final question, and maybe hopefully each of you can say something about this. The clock is ticking, and Marissa's gonna let us know when we are out of that time. But in keeping with other, in the book, you talk about how reparations is not foreign to this country or to this world, but somehow it becomes a thing, a hurdle, a mountain when it comes to paying reparations to the Black Americans who are descendants of enslaved people. What do you say to folks who believe that this is out of source, that this cannot happen when we talk about reparations? And we only have 1 minute left in the show, so I'm gonna have you back.
It's important to talk about precedents. when you're talking about the United States case, we have first the case of Japanese Americans who were unlawfully interned during World War II, who did receive reparations, $20,000 payments to each victim. We have more recently, in the case of the 9/11 attacks, and this was a situation when the United States was not even the culpable party, but the United States did pay reparations to the victims and to their heirs and their estates. Then, even more recently, many people are not even aware that the United States paid reparations to the hostages in the Iran terrorist takings. And those individuals received approximately $10,000 per day of captivity, which amounted to about $4.4 million per victim. So I think the first thing is we need to learn more about our history, to learn more about what has taken place, so that we can have a better understanding of what is possible. And certainly in the case of the pandemic, we have seen that the United States federal government has the capacity to mobilize large sums of money to benefit the American populace when there's a will to do so.
That is exactly right. I know, Dr. Darity, you want to jump in here, but we are out of time. We're going to do a part two. We will do a part two. But this from the book, when you say it must designate Black American descendants of US slavery as the eligible recipients, I mean, you really break it down. It must specify at minimum a key target of the reparations project is elimination of the Black-white wealth gap. That was one of my questions. Basically, do you believe that we could eradicate that gap without reparations and achieve by raising the average level of Black wealth to the average level of white wealth, et cetera, et cetera? It must indicate that the federal government will finance the project. It must prioritize direct monetary payments as the core form of restitution. Oh my God, we have so much more to do. Ms. Mullins and Dr. Darity, we're gonna have you back for a part two to this. And if your schedule allows, I wanna try to get you back on before Christmas so that we can finish this riveting conversation. Again, thank you so much for being in this fight. Thank you for your brilliance and your beauty and your commitment to justice. This is it, y'all. Pick up your copy, From Here to Equality. Sending love to both of you. And sending love to each and every one of you that joined us on the show today. We appreciate you here on Unbossed. We appreciate you here on the TYT network. Until next time, you know exactly what I want you to do. I want you to keep the faith, baby. Yes, keep it, keep it, keep it. But more importantly, you must keep the fight. Until next time.